everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Radiorama, where, as the name entails, I show you how to work on radios. Mostly radios, but sometimes my specialty, console stereos, overly complicated German sets, and if I can get my hands on them, a television. But it's been a while since we've had one of those get donated to our museum. In fact, most of the time, we're saying no to televisions because they're difficult to get rid of for some reason. And today we have a General Electric Musaphonic AM radio with audio input. And Musaphonic was sort of like General Electric's upper end line of radios. First I saw of those, I believe in the 40s. A few years ago, I restored this massive radio that had AM and two FM bands, and it was also a Musaphonic. And so they put the name on this clock radio. Admittedly, it has a better sounding speaker. It's got a few little nifty features in it, and I think some of these have a light that illuminates behind the dial here. This may be a little bit newer. The previous version of this was much more brittle. Whatever plastic they used would just shatter, if you bumped it. Whatever plastic they use here is much more durable. I know it's post 1955 because we have the civil defense marks here, those little triangles. If you were in the US in the 50s, that was kind of like it's called the Conrad radio alert system, where if we were being attacked, you could go to your air raid shelters. And that became useless after both the US and the Soviet Union came up with intercontinental ballistic missiles, giving no one enough time to get to anywhere. So they discontinued it in 1963. I don't know if it works. This is actually a piece that was part of our museum's collection, and it was determined that we already had another one that was blue, so we deaccessioned this guy. Looks like we have a control for either bass or normal. Very basic rudimentary tone control. Here's our audio phono input. This has a very strange volume control. It's double-ended. You go this way for turning up the phono, that way for turning up the radio. Kind of an interesting design. Whether it works or not, I don't know. So I'm going to go ahead and fire it up and turn it more towards the radio side. It's very hard to see into this case. I don't see, what little I can see of the tubes doesn't look like anything's happening. I can't tell if that's audio or if that's just a sound. I don't hear anything. Nope. The radio is dead. That probably means one of the tubes is out. Or we could have an open resistor. Or it could be I can't remember if this has a PC board in it. If it does, maybe one of the leads is snapped or broken, as a lot of those early PC boards tend to do. It's a weird case to get this thing apart. It's been a while. I think you take that off, and there's a few screws underneath, and it just comes out. But again, it's been a while since I worked on one of these. Well, I opened this up and I was wondering what had happened to the snooze button. I was like, oh well, I guess it's missing, but no, it's not. It was down on top of the chassis along with this spring. That's all metal. If that touched the wrong things on the way down, that could have been a major problem. I'm also remembering, there's some radios where I look at them and I'm like, I don't want to work on that. That was a pain in the butt last time. And I guess I forgot. This is a very tedious design. This chassis needs to come out. The speaker needs to get desoldered. And then the clock needs to come out. And you've also got, I don't know how that dial attached. Is that going to have to come off? Yeah. Oh, that's aggravating. So I think what I'm going to have to do, looks like how you get that indicator off is we need to slip the dowel string out. You can probably just bend the center of those clips together. I'm not sure if you guys can see this. It's very difficult to film this up there. Well, I've worked on it before, so I do want to confirm that I'm getting no filament before I go through all that trouble. In fact, you know what? I might do some inner case tube testing just to see if I can get it to come to life before I take it out. That 35W4 looks very, very toasty. I wouldn't be surprised if it's blown. Man, I'm not an expert, but you know, when I see the entire upper part of this tube completely blacked out like that, that looks more than just the silvering you get from regular tube usage. That looks burnt, but I'm going to test it anyway. We'll see what it does. Just comes to show you can't judge the tube by the way it looks. It looks like garbage. Tests really good, very, very good, with no shorts. So I'm sorry for not having faith in YouTube, but we'll put that back in there. Let's go through the rest of these and see if I can find the burnt tube. All right, 50C5 is toast. Completely toast. We have no filament. And actually, it looks kind of gassy. So we know that's bad. So we can put another one in there and see if that fixes the problem, at least for the filament. Okay, so we have the new good tube there. It's a Canadian tube. We'll give it a little bit of a Canadian flavor. So let's plug it in. All right, we got filament. I fully anticipate this to buzz like crazy, because that capacitor is probably shot. No sound. Let me unplug it for a minute and turn it around and see if I can look at the controls. Because that volume control has tripped me up before. Okay, I'm going to try it out now. It looks like we got filament, which is a huge improvement. This volume control is weird on this thing.
So far, I mean, just making plays. I think that, you know, stopping the run is it. PSA test, testosterone test, Doppler ultrasound, and a full year of follow-up visits for just $99. Go to PrimeMaleMedical.com or call 415-761.
Color me extremely surprised. I feel like these skinny orange capacitors are always bad, but I guess not always. I do think there is a pilot light up here. It's a strange bulb that I don't really have any of. It's like this two-pronged deal, so if I don't have it here, I'll have to get it at the museum stash, which is fine. But I'm going to go ahead and disassemble this, which of course is going to be a little bit more involved. I really hated it when these radio companies started making it where you couldn't pull out the whole chassis at once, like it was an integrated unit. Seems like as soon as we started going plastic, everything went out the window, and some designs were better than others, and some were a real pain in the butt, like this one. Okay, well, I got all this stuff out of there. I've forgotten what a pain in the butt it is. There's all these interlocking pieces, and if you have forgotten how it goes together, then it's a little confusing to get apart. This also had to come off of the tuning string to come out over this. But I think I'll know better when I reassemble it that I don't have to do that. I took the clock out with it because it had to, and yes, there's probably a little bit of radium in these hands. And what I've done in order to, well, the thing is that the membrane between the metal pieces here, like that's hollow. The hands are hollow basically, and it's got a thin material. I think it might be plastic or paper, but it tends to crack. And so to make sure that none of this paint can come loose, I painted it over with some clear water-based polyurethane. I mean, radium is not like, oh, it's completely safe. That's what Mary Curie died of, because she kept radium in her pockets. She probably also got it all over her fingers or whatever. Radium is most dangerous when it's inhaled or otherwise ingested, because then the stuff likes to bond to your bones and it just stays there and irradiates you for the rest of your life. And the more you eat of it, like the Radium Girls, if you ever look at that watch factory in New Jersey rather, the more you consume of it, the quicker you're going to decay from radiation. But anyway, it's just like nice insurance. I'm going to, what do I need to do here? I need to replace all these capacitors. There's quite a few actually. Surprising if mid-50s unit still has this many paper capacitors. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And of course there's the electrolytics. It's probably 2 or 3 values. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Typical 5-tube set. Yep, there's 3 values. 100. Nope, there's 2 values. 100 microfarads and 50 microfarads at 150 volts. They're marked with BCA. So what I'll need to do is wipe off some of this dust, and I'll get like a marker and mark down the side of the capacitor and onto the board, so I know which way orientated. These early PC boards are very fragile, so we're going to have to be very careful when we remove this guy. And I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. Okay, this is the PC board flipped over. You know what? It's actually pretty nice. Nice meaning a lot of PC boards from the 50s were just not very good. They were very brittle. I thought maybe that was the case with this one, but it's not. It's even got this metal reinforcement to keep this from flexing, which is key, because these leads, they keep on flexing, especially when you're pulling out and inserting tubes. You can snap one of those leads. But here's the electrolytic, and we can kind of see this is the collective negative of that capacitor, and here is the 2 positives, probably. That's my guess. If that's the case, and these 2, and this is the only ground, that means we'll have to run jumpers from the new capacitors to the common ground here. But I'll need to take a look and mark where goes what before I make that final determination. Okay, so now we're going to go to the next part of the process, which is removing the solder from around the lugs here. By the way, I like listening to your feedback. There was one guy that left a comment. It was like, handhelds suck. And I'm not going to deny that holding the phone by hand is not very good. I'm too much of a cheapskate to get like a legitimate web producing camera, which explains why after doing this for years, or a couple of years, I know that I'm never going to become famous. I'll just have like you, my loyal fans, who I much appreciate. I don't really do this for being famous anyway. I just do it because it's fun. But, and maybe guys will learn a thing or two, or not, or maybe you learn things incorrectly from me, because I know that I'm not a technical genius whatsoever. At this point, you're probably like, shut up! Okay, so you see what I'm doing there is I'm removing more and more solder, and then I clip the leads, the electrolytic down, so that I can get to the base of the solder better. I really need to get a new solder sucker. This guy's just about worn out. But I think we're getting closer. Gotta be gentle with these old PC boards. Even though this one does not seem as delicate. Oh wow. I think it's coming out now. It's like the radio's giving birth to a capacitor. It's like, all right. There we go. We got that guy out. Now we can take a look up topsy-turvy. Yeah, those are common negative, and then our 2 positives, so we'll need to run jumper cables from here to there to the leads. This thing is awfully dusty, so I think before I get too much further, I'm going to go in and like brush all this off with a brush. I don't have any compressed air, but whatever. But that was a nice clean removal of that capacitor. And so what I did is I looked at where the letter B was. And B is right here, and that's our 80 microfarad capacitor. So I'll put this 100 microfarad cap there. It just occurred to me that maybe I don't need to run a jumper. Maybe I can just go like that. That. Huh. Easy peasy. Just love it when there's a simplified solution versus reinventing the wheel. All right, get in there. You just hear the handhelds suck comment guy. All right, we'll solder underneath, and it should be good there. And then we'll start replacing the rest of these old nasty wax capacitors, which are no good. All right, well, I want to test it. It's not a bad idea to test your work as you go instead of doing it all at once. Jesus. Loud. Anyway, it definitely still works. Okay, well, it was not easy to do because it was very cramped in here, but I got all these capacitators replaced. And I've got everything wired up so we can try it out.
Soul sleep, where these souls are inert. Cells handle.
Game night on ESPN Radio. Be a part of Game Night Nation on the Dr. Pepper call-in line. Give us a call at 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888.
Play fake to the right-hand side. All the action, all the receivers going right. Tyler Lockett sneaks back.
It's a pretty sensitive radio. It's a pretty sensitive radio.
Pass by Geno Smith.
Late flag throw.
Both of the players.
I mean, look how beefy that tuning condenser is. I'm not joking around. There's 3 sections there.
First down.
Geno Smith. Right now, we're going to get you out to the roads. We'll say hello to Claire Beverly, and normally watch in a way that honors God.
I didn't even clean that out yet, and it's actually very sensitive. So I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out so far. I'm gonna call it quits for the night. I've got a lot of stuff going on at work that requires getting up very early, and so it's time to go in to make dinner and prepare to watch some mindless television, usually documentaries and boring stuff like that, and then go to bed. Anyway, that's it for tonight, but luckily we got this thing kind of sorted out in a very good way. Good start. Welcome back to day 2 of working on the General Electric Musaphonic clock radio, and we got all the electronics done last night. That's the not fun part. Now what I'm going to do is take the rest of the cabinet apart so it'll be easier to clean. That means removing the speaker. To do that, you remove these 4 bolts, and the front comes out and the speaker comes out as well. Also, I need to repair this. This is the piece that held the spring for the snooze button on. Put it there for safekeeping for now. But yeah, I want to get as much of this apart as I can because it's easier to clean that way. I'd forgotten that this whole thing comes apart like this. I'm curious what the advantage of this construction could have possibly been. The one thing I have thought about is maybe it makes it easier to reassemble. Because if what I can do when I put it back together again is I can put this down in there. That's probably how they assembled it. That's probably why they did it this way. It's weird. It seems like an awful lot of unnecessary molded pieces. But maybe it made it easier to manufacture. Okay, everything's been cleaned up real well inside and out. God, I wish this was a better color. It's not my favorite. It's not the most horrific color. It's like Band-Aid color. But I'm gonna let it dry. It's hotter than hell out here, so it'll probably dry pretty quickly. Look, I found one of those bulbs. That's what goes in these pilot lights. Then it has this little hat that it wears. I guess it shoots this little beam of light up that way. I bet most of the time these are missing because someone changes the bulbs. Like, I don't feel like putting that back on there. Anyway, glad I had some of these sitting around. Okay, the next thing we're going to want to do is add the audio input feature, which I do to most of my sets. It's easier on this one because this one already has one. It's got a phono connection. But we're going to do it safer than how they did it. If you were to, say, plug in your device and if you're barefoot on concrete, you'd get a little bit of a tingle or a jolt because the capacitor between this and ground is not sufficient. So we're going to put this isolation transformer in. And this is kind of like a tight chassis. I think what I'm going to do is put it here. Let's see what's going to happen when I try to install the clock. That'll be fine. I'll just glue it in. And that's going to go in through the audio input or incoming audio cable. I guess probably needs to go through here because I think this is all completely flush with the back of the plastic, so I might have to drill that out actually. I don't want people using that socket anyway, or that connection. Okay, so here's our situation. I drilled out the phono connection and ran this audio cable through. It's just a 3.5mm stereo jack. And that we'd combine the right and left channels together through a pair of resistors, 33 ohm resistors. That goes to the one side of the secondary of the isolation transformer. And all it is, if you're thinking about what the ratio is, and I'm not a mathematician, electrically it's 120 volts in and 12 volts out. And this is the primary, and this is going to go to the audio source or input, which is this former guy. The other side would go to ground. And again, we're going to mount it here, but before I do that, I'm going to put a little glue over the top of this so that that stays protected. And then we'll glue this entire thing to here, to the back side, and then we'll test it to make sure that it's going to work and do its thing. Okay, the deed is dude. We got the isolation transformer glued in. I realize that's not the most beautiful looking job, but again, I don't want this thing to come off. And so it's glued on there, and we've got our audio source running through to the phono side. That's bass, that's treble. Anyway, it sounds pretty good. Let's make sure the radio's still working.
To get anybody to chase that, it hasn't been particularly close to the strike zone.
Yeah, he's going to need to land that breaking ball. Lefties, it's
I do need to clean the volume control up a little bit.
Right-handers, you'll see quite a few.
It's a little scratchy. So, we'll get up my favorite product of all time, which is WD-40. And we'll put a little WD-40 down into the volume control cavity.
Water puts the mask back on, gets behind home plate, and we're ready to go.
No mercy.
Okay, so it's happy on both channels. So now that all of the electronics are done, all of it, and it's just a matter of reassembly, it's time to go to the cabinet and start polishing it up and preparing it so that we can put this sucker back together again. Yay! The most difficult and annoying work is done. Okay, so now it's time to start polishing the plastic, and I'm going to use Novus number 2 fine scratch remover. I'm just going to bring all the parts in individually and just do an assembly line. I'm going to be very careful here because I could probably wipe those numbers off very easily. In fact, that was under plastic, that clear plastic. There's no need to polish that anyway. But the rest of it needs a little love. I'm going to use my orbital buffer. Saves my hands. Alright, welcome to day number 3 working on the GE Musaphonic. And last night I cleaned and polished all the plastic. And so now that the electronics are done, the case is done, it's time to reassemble. And I'm going to try to do this in a smart way versus a stupid way. I think I can probably get the tub, or whatever you call this, and install the the chassis and whatever this thing is called, the slider for the tuning indicator. That's such a weird design. I'm guessing it goes like that. You know what I think it was? I think those screws holding that down. But we'll get to that in a minute. Actually, I need to wipe this off. It's a little dirty. We'll take it in the house and clean it up a little bit. Uh-oh! I almost dropped it. But you can tell this is totally the way to reassemble this thing. I was able to put this piece back in and then just slip this over. I remember when I first worked on it, I was like, why did they put it together this way? And I see why. It's convoluted, but if you know what you're doing, it's easy to take it apart and put it back together again. So we've got a few more pieces. We've got the overall clamshell there, the front glass, the back, and the speaker grill, wherever that went. Hopefully I didn't misplace it. Get this puppy back together again, and hopefully it'll still work. Okay. That's bass setting. That's treble setting. And then we can go over to radio.
Guilford College.
No one expects of the BP Astros. But they can pitch, and they've been pitching well all year long.
Anyway, that light is very subtle.
And they get the clutch hits when they need. We'll see how the
I guess it's meant to be looked at night. Pretty cool.
I'd like to take this opportunity to maybe amplify or clarify, I guess.
So I'm going to let it run here for a few hours, just to make sure nothing's going to thermally break down. Which I don't think it will. I have to say, I kind of hated this radio when I started on it, because I remembered what a pain the last one was, and I just realized, you know what, maybe now that I know how it really goes back together again, it's a lot easier to reassemble, so who knows. It's won me over. All right, thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Adios.